Hi everyone, I'm Siobhan McDonald from Granger Street Studios. I'm glad we can spend some time together today. Let's get started with our program. The Art of Spring. AgeSpan hosts us every month and makes sure this program gets delivered to you. They connect people of all ages and abilities with information and services to help them lead fulfilling lives in the community. I put a phone number here, but you can also check out their website for more information. We're also so thankful to Right at Home Boston North for sponsoring this program. With over 20 years of providing home care services, their care team members undergo a thorough background screening and ongoing training in order to provide the best quality home care for their clients. Their mission is to change the world one human interaction at a time. I can really get on board with that. Now let's jump into spring. What images come to mind when you think of the season, spring? Yeah, maybe some of you are thinking of flowers, people out in their yards again. Perhaps some of you are thinking of baseball. We are going to look at some beautiful works of art that have a spring theme and more. I bet a few of you thought of some spring holidays. March 20th is the first day of spring this year. What things about spring do you like the most and the least? That's a tough one. I would have to say for me, one of the things I like the most is seeing the trees begin to bloom. But I don't like the mud that gets tracked into my house. I believe one thing we all like is seeing more sunshine. George Harrison had been contributing songs to Beatles albums since 1963, and he had long been in the shadow of Lennon and McCartney. By 1969, however, his two songs on Abbey Road, Something and Here Comes the Sun, were among the standout songs on that album. As George said in 1969, I wasn't Lennon or I wasn't McCartney, I was me. And the only reason I started to write songs was because I thought, well, if they can write them, I can write them. George Harrison wrote the lyrics and melody to this song after experiencing a variety of stress from work, personal trials, and difficult times with the band. On a whim, he skipped work and he went to his friend Eric Clapton's house, where he found inspiration in the sunny and peaceful scene of his friend's backyard. Here's an interesting side note. The original handwritten lyrics to this song sold just 6 years ago for $1.2 million. And that wasn't the only Beatles song about the sun. These boys really like springtime. The sun often symbolized a sense of hope, renewal, and relief from difficult times, especially considering the often gloomy weather in their native England, where the arrival of sunshine after a long winter could feel particularly momentous. There are actually 17 Beatles songs that mention the sun or sunshine. But musicians aren't the only ones who like the sunshine. Springtime, which is also called The Reader, is an 1872 painting by the French Impressionist painter Claude Monet. It depicts his first wife, Camille, sitting reading beneath a canopy of lilacs. Sunlight peeks through the trees, creating patches of light on the ground and on her muslin dress. The painting represents an enchanting scene of domestic life. Camille and Claude Monet were married in 1870. Before this time, she had been his mistress and served as a model for his figurative paintings of the 1860s and 70s. She actually features in 50 of Monet's paintings. It is said that Camille possessed unusual talent as a model and was also used by Auguste Renoir and Edouard Manet, two other famous French painters. Imagine a beautiful warm day in 1874. Monet and his family are out in their garden, tending to the flowers and lounging in the grass. Nearby, their friend Edouard Manet is working on a canvas, painting his impression of the charming outdoor scene, which doesn't remain charming for long. What changes the mood? It's the arrival of another painter and friend of the Monet family, Auguste Renoir. Equally inspired by the touching moment, Renoir quickly sets up and starts painting beside Manet. Well, this is kind of a competition, isn't it? While working, Manet steals a glance at his neighbor's canvas. He grimaces, irritated that their subjects are so similar. Whispering into Monet's ear, he observes, "That boy has no talent. You're his friend. Tell him to give up painting." Although both Manet and Renoir paid particular attention to capturing the unique character of light and movement in the garden, they create noticeably different pieces. Renoir's work, which you see on the left with its subtle warmth, focuses on Mrs. Monet and her son Jean. With his soft, blurry brushstrokes, he conveys a pleasant mood. In contrast, Manet's painting on the right is a bit colder and more representational. His canvas, which includes Claude gardening in the background, seems as concerned about accurately conveying the afternoon's events as it does about reflecting the atmosphere. Years later, Monet discussed the backyard paint-off. Although it wasn't an official competition, he suggested that he may have preferred one work more than the other. When asked about that afternoon, Monet said he had appreciated that delicious Renoir painting. If you could bring back any spring fashion trend, what would it be? Hats? Perhaps some of these gorgeous A-line dresses? Maybe you wish you could wear gloves on a regular basis and not just in the winter. And here we have women's hats on the right. Which do you wish came back into fashion? Don't you love spring flowers? It's always exciting to see those green daffodil stems and other bulbs pushing out of the ground after a long winter. There is a daffodil festival in Nantucket in April every year. Daffodils are one of my favorites, such a cheery sign of spring. Gibbs Gardens, which is less than an hour north of Atlanta, Georgia, stages one of the country's largest daffodil extravaganzas with 20 million flowers on 220 acres. The Missouri Botanical Garden in St. Louis is another place that showcases millions of blooms in a woodland setting. I've never been to either one of these places, but I sure like seeing the pictures. Pansies, they're another sign of springtime. If you're a gardener, you know they're tough little flowers and can handle lots of different conditions, sun and shade, warmth and cold. Alma Thomas was a pioneering artist and educator who taught us the importance of seeking beauty in the everyday. Beyond her artwork, her contributions to Washington, D.C.'s cultural heritage were vast and varied. She was the first graduate of Howard University's Department of Art, the first African-American woman to have a work of art acquired by the White House collection, a founding member and vice president of one of the first Black-owned private galleries in the nation, and a teacher for 35 years. This painting on the left, Pansies in Washington, captures the essence of her vibrant and innovative artistic style. With bold strokes and a kaleidoscope of colors, she depicts a profusion of pansies dancing across the canvas, their petals swirling in a symphony of hues. In this masterpiece, she invites us to immerse ourselves in the beauty of the natural world, celebrating the joy and vitality found in the heart of Washington, D.C., where she spent much of her life. Several cows are sitting and standing in a broad field among blossoming trees. There are birds in the sky in the background. It's Women's History Month in March, so let's celebrate another female painter, Doris Lee. She is known as one of the most successful female artists of the Depression era in the United States. She made this lithograph, which is a type of print, in 1959. Because this is a print, there are multiple copies. She made and signed 250 prints. A few years ago, one came up at auction and sold for $750. That brings the worth of this whole collection to a total of almost $190,000. Let's take a look at tulips. The history of tulip paintings can be traced back to the early 19th century, when Dutch artists began incorporating them into their still life paintings. The Dutch loved variety in still life, so most flower paintings have flowers from different seasons. Maria van Oosterwijk studied and drew the flowers when they were in season and then put them together in the final paintings. During the Dutch Golden Age, which is in the 1600s, tulips became a symbol of wealth and status, and their beauty was celebrated through art. Flowers were rare and expensive. Seeds and bulbs had to be imported, so only wealthier people could afford flower gardens. Flower paintings were much more affordable, and the flowers didn't die. Van Oosterwijk's father and grandfather were both ministers, but at some point her father brought her for a visit to an artist studio, and that set her on the road to being an artist. Of course, very few women were professional artists during the 1600s. Sometime in the early to mid 1670s, she moved to Amsterdam, where her studio was opposite the workshop of a fellow flower painter. He courted her, but she refused his hand, and he reportedly stopped pursuing her because her devotion to painting was more important to her. Van Oosterwijk remained single throughout her life, but she raised her nephew, who had been orphaned. As you can probably see from this portrait of her, painted by another artist, she was also deeply religious. He made sure he included her Bible. I've also included on the left a picture of Delft, where she was born. The tulip trade became a booming industry in the Netherlands, with bulbs selling for exorbitant prices during the tulip mania period. At its height, the price for a rare and prized tulip bulb was about equal to a craftsperson's annual wage. The tulip represented wealth and fortune, both for the individual who owned the painting or flower, but also of the nation. But there was other symbolism too. The tulip has a relatively short-lived bloom lasting only 1 to 2 weeks. Within a religious context where piousness was prized, the symbol of a flower, particularly portrayed in various states of bloom and wilt, would on some level allude to the cycles of life. By the 19th century, the tulip's religious or spiritual associations had largely faded in the West, and they became recognized more as a symbol of spring and a compelling compositional motif. The region of Holland in the Netherlands had solidified its standing as a bastion of tulip cultivation, and with the rise and popularity of en plein air painting, painting outdoors, Claude Monet immortalized the vivid fields of bright flowers, once noting to a friend that the view was impossible to convey with our poor colors. Impressionist artists particularly loved tulips because of their vibrant, varied colors, which allowed them to capture the fleeting beauty of light and color changes in a single bloom, perfectly aligning with the Impressionist style of capturing a moment in time rather than a realistic depiction. Also, the large fields of tulips in the Netherlands provided a readily available subject with lots of color variations that could be painted outdoors, a key aspect of Impressionism. Tulips are a common motif in Pennsylvania Dutch folk art, including documents, samplers, and hex signs. The stylized tulip with 3 petals, known as the Trinity tulip, symbolizes faith, hope, and charity. Okay, I went way off on a tangent about tulips. My apologies. I love flowers so much that it's really easy for me to become obsessed when talking about them. I get my love of flowers from my mom, Hilda, and my vovó, my grandma, Jacinta. Here's a picture of my mom in her garden last year. Winter is hard for her. So she's really excited when the sun starts poking out more and warmer weather comes. She wants to get back out there. Let's look at a painting together now. What's going on in this picture? You're seeing a lot of people. Yes, people doing lots of things. There are people in the front, these figures in the front, the men who have shovels who are digging, and you're seeing figures here with what looks like upside down baskets, these hats, and this woman could be perhaps pulling this plant or planting plants. Maybe they're weeds that they're pulling. I certainly know what that's like. We have other woman, this woman right here, who is pouring water. Perhaps she just planted seeds. And more figures still in the background here. Figures and then a whole bunch of sheep. I'm not sure. Is this woman in red and this man in blue? It looks like they're holding the sheep. Perhaps they're sharing them. Ah, yes, here's someone with a basket of wool. There are men over here, and it looks like they could be repairing this arbor. And then when we look back, there's yet more to see. A canal or a river going along the edge of these fields, and yet more people in the background. We're noticing the trees have some leaves on them and a few flowers. This is definitely a painting of spring. The artist's name is Peter Bruegel, known as Peter Bruegel the Younger. He was probably inspired by this drawing his father, Peter Bruegel the Elder, did in 1565. His painting is almost 60 years older than this drawing. He is known for making numerous copies after his father's work, which I think is quite an honor and tribute to his dad. Notice that Bruegel the Younger, who you're seeing at the bottom, paints an almost, but not identical, mirror image of his father's drawing. So in the drawing, this structure building is on the left, and in the painting, it's on the right. In the drawing, the women who are leaning down to weed are on the left, and in the painting, they're on the right. I love this quote. Spring shows what God can do to a drab and dirty world. Do you agree with that? If you're with someone while you're watching this program, now would be a good time to pause and talk about that and what it means to you. It's time for some fun facts. I was surprised to find out that your sense of smell improves in spring. With new flowers blooming, spring is a feast for the sense of smell. In fact, studies show that people's ability to detect smells improves in spring. The Eiffel Tower grows in the spring. Incredibly, the Eiffel Tower can expand by up to 6 inches in the warmer temperatures of spring. This is because iron expands when it heats up. But don't worry, it'll shrink back down when the weather cools down. Spring has inspired poets for centuries. Robert Frost's A Prayer in Spring and Emily Dickinson's A Light Exists in Spring are just a couple of examples of poems that celebrate this season of renewal. Let me read you a little bit of the Frost poem now. Oh, give us pleasure in the flowers today, and give us not to think so far away, as the uncertain harvest keeps us here, all simply in the springing of the year. Some families participate in spring cleaning when they do a deep clean of their homes at the start of spring. Did you do that in your home? Baby birds. Spring is when most baby birds are born. Yes, spring has inspired artists for centuries with painting, sculpture, photography, literature, and fashion. This spring fashion is brought to us by Audrey Hepburn. We could go on and on because spring does something to us and for us. Spring is hope and color, light and love. Thank you for letting me spend time with you today. I hope you get a chance soon to look outside, to get outside and see the flowers and green grass growing. I hope you can hear the birds chattering in the morning as they return back from their winter getaways in the south. I hope you know I care about you and wish you a most wonderful month. Thanks again to Right at Home Boston North and AgeSpan for making it possible for us to spend time together each month. Wow, now that we've spent some time looking at those beautiful paintings and talking about some signs of spring, feeling a little more hope after this cold and icy winter. Wishing you all a beautiful day. I'll see you next month with some new art. In the meantime, goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. It's time to say goodbye. Goodbye, my friends. I'll see you soon.